Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. It's Wednesday, it's October 25th, and this will be our chart lesson for the day. And finally, we got a big day. And that's what I say the longer the market goes um, and stays tight and doesn't have a lot of movement, when it does finally move, it usually moves in a big way. So it's been a while since we've had a move that's over 20 points. And I mean, few years back, that was pretty standard for a day to move 15 or 20 points. You'd still get range days occasionally, but it didn't last as long as what we've had recently. So yeah, it was really nice today and kind of refreshing. Um, and it was really weak for a while there. This chart looks pretty busy, but there was a lot going on different levels. There's obviously a bigger channel. At first, I thought it was just going to be a two-tiered one, but once it dropped down, you just move an equal distance, and that's probably where it'll bounce again. And almost to the tick down here, it bounces, it goes back, and where does it turn down? Right off the midline, and it moves down, and you get a little bit of overshoot, but that's your sign. And notice we come up short on. There's three different things going there. There's a real tight channel here, shorter term. You get a break and a new low on it. There's also the blue one working down, which you can see that trend line comes into play. We come up short on that one while we get an overshoot on the big brown one. I think the big brown one is the main pattern, and you get an overshoot, and that led to a reversal. And that's what happens a lot of times when you get a big overshoot on a real the market's just overdone. And so and once everybody realizes that, they all want to get on board, and you just don't come back for a retest a lot of times. So, um, but yeah, you really didn't need the brown channel. It did help here because it gives you some confluence, and it also gave you confluence here on the trend line and the midline, trend line and midline here. So it did help, but the main thing it helped you do was it gave you a good idea of where to expect this reversal right here, or where to expect this bounce. And I really thought we might reverse the whole thing then, but once we started down again, um, and it stayed inside this, you get a little bit of a close outside there. So you could say we still got a close and two legs down on the blue one as well, but that's not what I call a convincing close outside. So I wouldn't be afraid to continue to trade that trend if it continued on. Obviously, it doesn't. We shot right on through there, and we come back and we test it, which that's pretty standard. And then notice what happens. You got confluence with the trend line, this trend line, and the EMA all working together, and that's pretty good right there. Um, that's what you like to see. So yeah, really nice day. We got a few trades to talk about today, um, and um, let's just back out here. I'm going to have to move over and back out. I'm going to go ahead and move the brown one off. That's the reason I went ahead and talked about that, just to get it out of the way. Well, actually, before I do, let's talk about this right up here. It looked like it was going to be a really bad and weak day until we broke lower right here. But if you drew your trend line off the highs here and drug it right down, um, this looked really tempting right in here, because especially that one right there. But I'm just, when you're in that sideways and you're back and forth above and below the EMA, I think you're better off to skip that. And notice we finally worked below, and we actually pushed through that bottom and got a little breakout pullback with a little small bar. I think that's about 3 ticks. And so you figure you're coming to test these lows. But man, this thing just takes off. And you would have had a runner here. You would have had a runner here, here, here. You would have caught a runner on every single one of these. And that's what makes a day like this really good, is because um, you just let those runners go until you see, you might have exited your runners right here on these first ones. And then, of course, you get runners on all these too. And again, when we came up short and started reversing here, I'd probably exit. So, um, especially once we broke outside here, that's definitely a clue. You better get out. So you could just catch one runner today. You could take one trade on a day like this and make a killing. So you only got to find one of these and catch a runner on it, and you probably gonna have a great day. So But yeah, back to this. I just don't think you want to play this big trend line because of all the sideways stuff. So I'm going to remove that just to kind of, I mean, this chart's really busy, so I'm going to remove all that. Um, and of course, you got the bigger blue one here. I just drew that off those first two swings. And but the first trade I saw was right here. Notice that you got a double top up here, and then you get a first entry long. And you really don't break higher here, but it's still two legs down, and it tried to go higher, and you get a little breakout pullback. And that's just a real low entry or low risk entry because it's only 3 ticks, and you got a little bit of room. You don't have a whole lot of room before these closes here. It's kind of, it doesn't look like there's much room there, but there's probably 5 ticks in there, 5 or 6 ticks even before the close. Let's just see. We had to back out so far that it doesn't look like it doesn't look like there's a lot of room. Yeah, didn't mean for that to happen. So your low there is 62.50, and let's just see where your close is here. 62.50. See, that's your close there is 61.75. So you didn't quite have enough for your closes, but even for the low of that bar or even that bar, you had enough to get out. So that I like this trade. Just trying to catch a quick scalp. You don't know that you're going to get this big move here, but it turns out pretty nice. And then of course we bounce, and there's a second entry short right here. Let me try to make this a little bit bigger. I just have to make do here. We'll have to move the chart as we go. This is really just sideways, even though there's a first entry and there's a second entry, but that's a neutral doji, and you got 3 or 4 stacked up. So you're just going sideways. And of course you should have drawn that trend line right there. And then suddenly you break out and it turns down right off that trend line. This is the one you want to go short below right here, but your stop still has to go below that high. So I like this one because it's a failed breakout and it confirms that, hey, maybe there's a trend line. And the reason you start your another trend line here is because that's really where the downtrend starts. It starts trending down, but this is where the big trend starts down, so you want to draw another one here just in case, and come to find out it's in play as well. It can't hardly break through this one, but you can see it did a little bit there and it bounced off of it, so it's definitely in play. You got a little overshoot of it here too, and again, but it bounces off the blue one. So I like this as a failed breakout. You can also, this is basically a double bottom, so that's still like a second entry short as well, so that's another thing. And this one takes off, so you got a runner right out of the gate, even if you didn't catch this one. And you had to be patient here. You just had to sit here all morning, and it looks like, hey, we're not going to get anything today. This is the tightest channel we've seen probably all week, and it looks like you're not going to get anything, and then look what happens. So, you know, don't get lulled to sleep. You hear me say that a lot, and I talk about that a lot, and you know, when I post stuff as well. But don't let the market lull you to sleep. But then you're coming back and you get another short here. You got a lot of stacked up there. That's just really the first 2 swings of that trend, and you're not back to the blue one, which is the one we're really playing up until you get to the next turn down here. So you really just don't, you can't really go short right there. If you had a different setup than mine, maybe. You could treat that like a second entry because it's a first entry, and then if it had gone higher, maybe, and then broke out all in one bar, maybe. But I just don't think you want to go short there. You don't know that this is coming, and you've already got one leg, a correction, and another leg. And those are pretty much measured legs. You can see that's basically 2 perfect measured legs. And so it's risky going short right there. It does back up here and turn down again, but you're going short at the low of the day, and that's always a risky thing. But then finally you come back and you get this big bearish bar right here, and you confirm that green trend line. You do get a little close outside there, but like I said, that's not very convincing, just like this one's not very convincing. You end up making two legs down and it reverses, and then you get a little close out to it here, and then a couple of legs down it reverses. So they played out, but I don't necessarily call that a convincing close. I like to see a little more than that, but that's all we got today. But I do like this one because it is off this green trend line, which appears to be in play. Everything's well below the EMA consistently. Everything's pointing down. It's getting steeper. Each trend is getting a little bit steeper. So I like that's a big bearish bar. Rather than putting a stop there, you might let it break lower and then use a limit order and try to get a little better entry. But you still got a lot of room there, so you could just put a stop there, and off it goes. And that turns out to be another great trade. This one doesn't quite get back to the trend line. It is a failed second entry long. It's not much room here. You could probably argue for that one since this is looking very, very weak. I'm willing to maybe make it green, but I still think it's getting risky at that point. The further you get into the trend, the more risky it is. And that's what happens to people, is that when you get your early chances up here, everybody's scared to enter. And then finally when they realize it's going lower and they watch it over and over, then they finally say, well, next time I'm getting in, and then like right here, they jump in and then it reverses on them, or they jump in right here and then it reverses on them, and they get stopped out, takes their stop out, and only to go right back down again. And that's what happens to people. So just remember that on a strong trend day, you're still looking for reasons to enter, but they need to be perfect. And this is not perfect because it didn't get back to the trend line. It's nowhere near the EMA, although the trend line is lower than the EMA. So, and it's just a first entry. It is a failed second entry long, and you could call that a double test of that level too. Notice it comes back once, twice. So there's some reasons to argue for that one. But it's getting risky now. So I will leave that one green. And then you're bouncing again. You get a close outside, a couple of them here. Notice that you're just walking up that, and then suddenly you get a couple of closes out. And it wasn't enough to give me confidence to go short there, even though that is a little ways away from the EMA, and even though it is right off that blue one. If you want to be real aggressive, you could take that one. But I'm not crazy about it. But it is low risk. It's only 3 ticks. But notice it would have come back and probably stopped you out there if you had your stop 1 tick above it. But with 3 ticks, you might put it 2. But then you're giving up your low risk. So I really don't think you want to take that trade. I think you want to wait on this one. And you get a little trap here. And look how bearish that is. That's the one to go below. And then you get your failed second entry long here and another big bearish bar. If you could get in here, you want to jump on here too. And you may not could get in here though, because it just gaps right over the EMA there and takes off again. So if you didn't get in here, you may not have got a chance to get in. But your chart may look a little different. But anyway, you want to add on there if you're already in. If you're not in, you definitely want to enter there. And then off it's headed down again. And then this is still, even though we made a little lower low there than that, that's still 2 legs back to the EMA and the trend line. Another bearish bar. I like going short there again. Off it goes. Another great entry. And then notice how we don't get down here. We had an overshoot of the brown channel. Remember that. Big overshoot right here. Well, I wouldn't say a big overshoot, but it overshot it twice. Maybe I want to say it overshot that part right there too. So maybe 3 times, and then it reverses. You got a reversal pattern here, but it doesn't go through the EMA. It's not a very, it's a failed second entry short. I wouldn't say it's a reversal pattern because it doesn't get through the EMA. But then watch how it shoots right through, comes back, and it confirms that trend line again. You got confluence between EMA, this trend line, and the downtrend line. And that's what you would expect it to do. Come back and test that before it goes higher. big bullish bar. I like going long right there. Um, and it runs up, pulls back. That's not bullish enough on a first entry for me. Um, this is a pretty nice bar, but then it's so big, and then your stop has to go here, so it's too risky. But then you get another one, and you get a little trap right here. And so you get a chance to get in one more time here, and off it goes. And you could have caught a runner on. You actually wouldn't have caught a runner on this one, but you would have this one, and off it goes. So you even had a chance to get a runner on the run back up. And there's another bounce off the trend line here. Um, by the time we move that far and we've been away from the EMA that long, I think it's too risky. And the only way I would say you would want to enter this if it breaks higher and you could get in right back here, but I'd probably want a second entry by this point. And even then, it's still a long way away from the EMA, and you probably would have got burned there. And then it backs up, and again, that's a pretty big sell-off again. So I probably want to see a second entry and a break of the trend line or something. You do get a higher low here, which would have led me to want to enter because that's a big, strong trend. So you're probably going to retest that high. But this was after 2 o'clock. It's just right there, though. So I'll be honest with you, I don't even mind marking that blue because that's a very nice setup right there. And you're expecting it to come back and test after a trend that strong, a reversal that strong. You'd expect it to test that high. And then look what happens after it tests that high. It sells off really well again. And then it just makes a double bottom and it hits higher again. So I guess once we had the big sell-off, eventually it got down here and people perceive this to be a value once again. This is just the market. It won't quit. And anytime you get a big sell-off like that, sometimes it may last a day or two, but eventually it's going to reverse and go and trend strongly back up again. And by the time we got it right in here, it was pretty obvious we were probably heading higher. So, but yeah, it was a really great day. Relatively straightforward. At least the trades I marked were all relatively straightforward. There were some other possibilities like the short here but you probably don't want to take. There was another one in here somewhere. I can't remember. But anyway, we've been waiting for this one for a while, so hopefully you got a small piece of it. It doesn't take but 1 or 2 trades on a day like this with the runner to really maximize your profits. And that's the great thing. Lately there hadn't been many runners, but there were today. And those runners, when you get days like this where you can catch a lot of runners or just even catch 1 or 2, they really change the numbers on your math as far as profitability, because you can make sometimes 8, 10, 12, 15, maybe even 20 points on one runner, where that's 8, 10, 15, or 20 scalps to get with one contract to get that much. So it really can improve your bottom line and change your numbers. And so when you start trending real well like this, you definitely want to try to, when you're like this, you just usually are better off to scalp out. But when you start to see trends like this and like this back up, you want to try to hang on to some runners because you're going to get them. And you can see every time we came back to a key entry point, where were all the great entries? As usual, key entry points off the trend lines. Key entry points. And look how you always got the big moves. Look what happens when you come back to this trend line. Key entry points. That's where your big moves are at. And that's the key to it all. Support and resistance is really what it is. And all trend lines are slanted support and resistance lines. So this was a little bit before 7, but this would have been a great one to catch here. Of course, you probably wouldn't have ridden all this out. You would have just scalped out. But if you can catch, that's your breakout that makes the major high of the day. And if you could have caught that and hung on, look what you would have been able to do. And I'm always telling you on these ranges, these failed breakouts will often catch your major highs and lows for the day, And when you can catch those, you can really catch a run. So this was one here. This is a little trading range, and this is your failed breakout. This turns out to be a major high of the day. Even though it's not the high of the day, it's still a major one. And so you want to try to catch those. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, hopefully you had a great day. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week. Hopefully maybe we'll get another day like this tomorrow, or we could just go back and do a range. Who knows? But I'm keeping my fingers crossed and hoping for another good trend day. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.